Hello and welcome to the topic scleroderma in the module Dermatology. By the end of this topic, you should be able to define scleroderma, explain the pathophysiology of scleroderma, outline the causes of scleroderma, outline the classification of scleroderma, describe the clinical manifestations of scleroderma, outline the investigations done for scleroderma, and discuss the principles of management as well as the complications and prognosis of scleroderma. Let's get started. Scleroderma is a systemic autoimmune disease of unknown origin characterized by the formation of fibrosis in the skin and other organs. In Greek terms, scleros mean hard or indurated, while derma refers to skin or leather. The exact pathophysiology is complex and still remains incompletely understood. It is most likely due to the interaction between the environmental and genetic factors, where there is a sequence of pathogenetic events initiated by unknown etiologic factors in a genetically receptive host, which then trigger microvascular injury characterized by structural and functional endothelial cell abnormalities. Subsequently, with the increased production and release of mediators such as cytokines, chemokines, polypeptide, growth factors, prostaglandins, and reactive oxygen species, or in the reduction of important compounds such as prostacyclin and nitric oxide, this will result in the establishment of a chronic inflammatory process with the participation of macrophages and T and B lymphocytes. This immunological alteration induces the activation of fibroblasts, causing endothelial and epithelial cells to differentiate into myofibroblasts and recruit fibrocytes from the bone marrow and growth factors from these cells. The activated myofibroblast then produces exaggerated amounts of extracellular matrix, resulting in tissue fibrosis. The causes are mainly divided into three causes, which are environmental factors, drug and genetic factors. Environmental factors, for example, include exposure to silica, solvents such as vinyl chloride, trichloroethylene, epoxy resins, benzene, and carbon tetrachloride or radiotherapy. For drugs, bleomycin, carbidopa, penicillamine, and vitamin K are said to be a cause for scleroderma as well as in susceptible patients. Lastly, genetic factor where there is an increased risk in first-degree relative of individuals with scleroderma is also a risk factor. Scleroderma can be classified into systemic and localized. For systemic, it is further divided into diffuse, where there is skin thickening present in the trunk in addition to the face and extremities. Limited, where skin thickening limited to sites distal to the elbows and knee, with face and neck also involved. Next is overlap, where there is presence of systemic sclerosis with features of other connective tissue diseases such as SLE, rheumatoid arthritis. And lastly, sign, where there is no skin changes but there is characteristic internal organ involvement. For localized, there is morphea, where there is hardening, discolored and thickened patches of skin on various areas of the body without internal organ involvements, and linear. Scleroderma can be classified into systemic and localized. For systemic, it is further divided into diffuse, where there is skin thickening present in the trunk in addition to the face and extremities. Limited, where skin thickening is limited to sites distal to the elbows and knees, with face and neck also involved. Next is overlap, where there is presence of systemic sclerosis with features of other connective tissue disease such as SLE and rheumatoid arthritis. And lastly, sign, where there is no skin changes but there is characteristic internal organ involvement. For localized, there is morphea, where there is hardened, discolored and thickened patches of skin on various areas of the body without internal organ involvements, and linear, where area of skin affected appears in band. For symptoms-wise, the clinical manifestation varied according to the type of classification of scleroderma. In localized scleroderma, patients can present with areas of skin thickening and discolored with hair loss. In patients with systemic kind of scleroderma, there are multiple systems involved, where almost every system can be involved, for example, skin, vascular, gastrointestinal, respiratory, musculoskeletal, cardiac, renal, genitourinary, ENT, endocrine, neurological, psychiatric, and constitutional. So now I will elaborate on the signs of each system involved in scleroderma. For skin, it can become edematous, tight and shiny, loss of hair, decreased sweating, unable to make skin full, microstomia, salt and pepper appearance, telangiectasias, and calcinosis. For ENT, there could be decreased saliva, xerostomia, and xerophthalmia. For vascular, there could be a color change of fingers and toes, subintimal hyperplasia, infarction, and dry gangrene of fingers and toes. For musculoskeletal, there could be a decline hand and joint movement, tendon friction rubs in diffuse systemic sclerosis, weakness and muscle wasting and acrosteolysis with a resorption or lysis of distal end of the phalanx. For the respiratory system, there could be dry rales, signs of aspiration, pneumonia, and accentuated P2 due to pulmonary arterial hypertension. Gastrointestinal, they can present with decreased bowel sound, abdominal distension, mucosal telangiectasia, and anal sphincter incompetence. For renal involvement, the patient can come in with hypertension, oliguria, dyspnea, and edema. Cardiac would be arrhythmias and pericardial effusion. For neurology, they could come in with trigeminal neuralgia and carpal tunnel syndrome. And lastly, for genitourinary system, they could present with hematuria, and for female patient, they could be experiencing vaginal narrowing. Now, in limited scleroderma, there is CREST syndrome characterized by calcinosis, Raynaud's phenomenon, esophageal dysfunction, sclerodactyly, and telangiectasia. Scleroderma is diagnosed clinically, and some investigations can be offered to support the diagnosis. For instance, the skin and lung biopsies can provide conclusive diagnosis of systemic sclerosis, whereby the biopsy can show severe tissue fibrosis, chronic inflammation, and microvascular disease. However, these are not routinely used for diagnostic purposes, as the diagnosis of systemic sclerosis is based on clinical manifestations as mentioned earlier. ECG can be used as supportive investigation to identify arrhythmias and conduction abnormalities. It can identify early changes of right ventricular strain caused by pulmonary hypertension, and in advanced states, right atrial hypertrophy. So for laboratory investigations, order a serum creatinine to identify if suspect the patient to have scleroderma renal crisis due to malignant hypertension, and oligo or anuric acute renal failure, because this is due to the increase in vascular permeability, activation of coagulation cascade, and renin secretion, which leads to acute renal failure. Order a complete blood count to look for microangiopathic hematological picture and thrombocytopenia. Request for peripheral blood film to look for microcytic anemia due to iron deficiency anemia or anemia of chronic disease. For muscle enzymes, it could be elevated in those with inflammatory myopathy. You can also order CXCL4, which is an anti-angiogenesis cytokine. Elevation is seen in systemic sclerosis and correlates with severity of pulmonary fibrosis and the progression of pulmonary hypertension. An NT-proBNP, in which the elevation is associated with early pulmonary hypertension, can also be evaluated. And lastly, autoantibodies that you can order are anti-nuclear antibodies, topoisomerase 1 antibodies, anti-centromere antibodies, anti-RNA polymerase 1 and 3 antibodies, anti-PMCSCL, and anti-RNP. There are several imaging studies that could be ordered. First, we have HRCT, which is to evaluate pulmonary involvement, where they can present with ground glass appearance, then replaced by honeycombing and traction bronchiectasis. Then repeat every 6 months if active alveoli or interstitial pulmonary fibrosis is present. A transthoracic echocardiography can be used to assess pulmonary artery pressure and to assess septal fibrosis or pericardial effusions. Conduct these tests at initial evaluation and during serial follow-up. A systolic pulmonary artery pressure of greater than 35 mm mercury is considered to represent pulmonary arterial hypertension. An esophageogastroduodenoscopy with appropriate biopsies, esophageal manometry assessment, and pH monitoring studies used to survey and evaluate the upper gastrointestinal system can be done. Lastly, a nail fold capillary microscopy for assessment of microvascular alterations in systemic sclerosis. Scleroderma patients could have fewer capillaries than normal. For functional studies, a pulmonary function test can be performed every 6 to 12 months to detect early abnormalities indicative of development and progression of pulmonary hypertension or pulmonary fibrosis. Results of pulmonary function testing are ultimately abnormal in 80% of patients, typically showing restrictive pattern with decreased forced vital capacity and total lung capacity. Next, a carbon monoxide diffusion capacity is a very sensitive test and helps establish lung involvement at an earlier stage. A DLCO will be low in patients with lung involvement. Now let's take a look at the management. The principles are to manage complications and to provide symptomatic relief. Medical therapy is usually the first choice for most patients. People with early diffuse cutaneous systemic sclerosis should be offered an immunosuppressant comprising of methotrexate, mycophenolate, or cyclophosphamide, although the evidence base is weak. Some people might later be candidates for autologous hematopoietic stem cell transplant. For patients with skin involvement, methotrexate or mycophenolate is a choice of immunosuppressant. Other options include cyclophosphamide, oral corticosteroid therapy, and possibly rituximab. Azathioprine or mycophenolate should be considered after cyclophosphamide to maintain improvement in skin sclerosis or lung function. Patients with Raynaud's phenomenon offer calcium channel blockers and angiotensin II receptor antagonists to help relieve the symptoms. And patients with digital ulcers will require multidisciplinary team involvement, oral vasodilator, analgesia, and sildenafil. Patients with lung fibrosis offer them intravenous cyclophosphamide. For renal involvement, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors should be prescribed. Scleroderma patients with heart failure prescribe them with immunosuppressants with or without pacemaker and offer the treatment of diuretics. Offer antibiotics to patients with infected calcinosis. And musculoskeletal involvement patients will require immunomodulatory treatment. Now, how about surgical therapy? Well, patients with Raynaud and digital ulcers can be offered palmar sympathectomy at the same time with or without botulinum toxin. For them with calcinosis, surgical treatment can be offered but only for those with severe refractory painful calcinosis. Now, I would like to discuss about the complications of scleroderma. Patients with scleroderma will experience vasospasm, which will be presented as Raynaud's phenomenon and digital ulcers. For them with pulmonary arterial hypertension, it can lead to right heart failure eventually. For patients with scleroderma renal crisis due to an increased vascular permeability, activation of coagulation cascade and renin secretion, it will eventually result in acute renal failure. Due to the scarring of the heart muscles from the disease, they can be complicated with heart failure, arrhythmias, and pericarditis. Lastly, they can suffer from malnutrition due to microstomia and reduced calorie intake. For patients with localized scleroderma, their prognosis is better than those with systemic involvement. Patients with localized scleroderma may live an uninterrupted life with minor symptoms. On the other hand, patients with systemic involvement, their 10-year survival rate is 90%. However, if they have developed interstitial lung disease or pulmonary arterial hypertension, their risk of death will be increased. In summary, scleroderma is a systemic autoimmune disease of unknown origin characterized by the formation of fibrosis in the skin and other organs. The pathophysiology is complex and remains incompletely understood, most likely due to interaction between environmental and genetic factors. It can be classified into systemic, which includes limited and diffuse, overlap and sign, and localized, which includes morphea and linear types. Do note that this disease can involve multiple systems. It is diagnosed clinically and multiple autoantibodies are associated with this disease. Management is focusing on managing complications and providing symptomatic relief. Lastly, the prognosis of localized scleroderma is good. However, the prognosis is bad if interstitial lung disease or pulmonary arterial hypertension develop in systemic disease. We have come to the end of this topic. Thank you.